Peace. Good afternoon and welcome to the Building Blocks Network. Let me start off with my normal disclaimer. If you tuning into the channel and it's your first time, please like, share, subscribe to the content. We would really appreciate you liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. We have a small goal of I'm trying to reach approximately about 10,000. I'm just going to shoot for 10,000 by June, hopefully by June 2022. You know, we're a new channel and we're just trying to get out there, get the good conversations, the uncomfortable ones, so we can have a comfortable reality, all right? So again, thank you for tuning into the Building Blocks Network, and let's roll. So welcome back. So today I have an interesting topic. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Great Reset. Now this is going to come out as a series of videos. This is a very intrepid and deep topic. There's a lot of layers to this, and there's a lot to dig into, and we're going to have to go into a lot of discovery to pull out the information that's needed so everybody can have an understanding of what the Great Reset is and what it consists of. Okay, so again, we're going to be talking about the Great Reset. I pulled up a press room insight from Santander, and they were talking about the Great Reset in reference to Klaus Schwab's book. It was entitled COVID-19, The Great Reset. Now, their article was called Capitalism Reset and the New Social Contract Post-COVID-19 Crisis. Now, before I really go into the Great Reset, are we apt to see the changes that are taking place that are leading up to what we would be called the Great Reset? For instance, like mandates. Seems like we went from a more of a democratic standpoint to more of an authoritarian one, because now there's always a new policy, a new mandate, a new procedure, something that we must follow. And it seems it comes as authoritarian. It's not democratic. We're not asked to vote upon how we feel about the process. We're not given any choice in the manner. We're just told, do as you're told or suffer the consequences. For instance, let's look at the vaccine. For people who were saying, oh yeah, I support the mandate, they are really lost in translation, because once you supported that one mandate, you left the doors open for them to create mandates for an entirety, right? So let's look at it now. You had a vaccine mandate. If you didn't take the vaccine, you could lose your job. Then it went from there, you can't go into certain restaurants without a vaccine passport. Now, I just read an article this morning where police were harassing a child that was under 10 years old for not having a vaccine passport in New York City. Applebee's decided to call the police on a child who couldn't produce a vaccine passport. A child. This is where we have fallen to. So now, me personally, I don't know anybody that really supports Applebee's. I think that's like the most disgusting food that was ever created. Looks like trash. It tastes like trash, right? But why would you therefore call the police on a child? What can the child do to harm you that you felt to call the police to resolve the matter? Now, the Great Reset has been an idea that has been running around for a little under 10 years. This idea has been afloat maybe a little over 10 years to be approximate, because I do remember hearing about this in 2010. So let's say a little over 10 years, this ideal has been floating around in the air. There has been one gentleman who's been really purporting this information to the public, Klaus Schwab. He's the founding executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. Now, and later on in the article, or later on in the video, or not this video, in later videos, you will hear how they have their hands in this pandemic in some sort of way. In this article, Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, argues that the long-term economic consequences of the pandemic will exacerbate the climate and social crises that were already underway, and this will make it more urgent that the Great Reset of our economic and social systems. That was a little bit to unpack. But let's unpack that a little bit, shall we? So now, when we speak of long-term economic consequences of the pandemic, a lot of people don't want to hear this or don't want to grasp this concept. But when Trump was in office, these are the things that he was already talking about. When he was being panned out or made to look like he was actually crazy, when he wasn't. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't losing his mind. He wasn't just talking off the cuff all the time. Sometimes he did. But when he was talking, he already had the insight of what's going on. He knew that he had to be the disruptive force to keep it from becoming a one world global economy. Yes, that's part of the Great Reset, a one world global economy, which is now called, they have a new name for it. It's called stakeholders capitalism. Keep that in mind. I want you to hold on to that term, stakeholders capitalism. That's the new phrase or phraseology that they're using now to describe socialism, aka communism. What we have now and what we all usually participate in or care to participate in is shareholders capitalism, is what built country when it came to finance at one point. Some things happened along the way that changed that, but we'll go into that another time. The long-term economic consequences. So what in that consists of, like, for instance, an abundance of stimulus payments, unnecessary payments. So you want to crash the market, because if you crash the financial market, then you can have a case for long-term economic consequences, because every economic plan, aka Biden, put into place was a failed one. There wasn't any source of reality when it came to those plans being a pillar of success. There wasn't. So our deficit is growing by margins and leaps and bounds because you want to keep pulling from a Federal Reserve who's already under, and we don't even own the Federal Reserve. Let's take into that. Let's also look into the fact that we don't even own most of our own money. So if you were to take the dollar, the US dollar, if you were to take a breakdown of the US dollar, you would know that China owns more of the US dollar than we do. That's another conversation as well, but let's get deep. Let's get uncomfortable. China owns more than 30% of the US dollar. Our dollar is broken up into so many increments. We owe China so much money, we're still paying the interest on the loan that they gave us. We haven't even touched the principal yet. And the way that their loan is structured, we'll probably never touch the principal. We'll be paying on this forever. This country will be paying that country forever. Failed policies. The Great Reset. Nations are taking over other nations. For instance, how China owns now the Jamaican port, the port of Jamaica, which was the biggest employer of the island. Which now you went from being an employer to an employee. Because you had a deal where you had sold half and you was retaining half, and then in some odd years y'all would have come back to the table and see if you wanted to sell the other half or buy back your other half so you could be a whole again. But that wasn't the case. During the pandemic, things happen behind the scenes a lot of people don't even know. So now do you think that is going to be the biggest income driver for Jamaica now? Of course not. Because now your people, the Jamaicans, they don't even own it now. So now you work for the Chinese because more than likely they're going to bring their people in first. The higher executive positions, all of the top paying positions, they're going to go to their people. You're going to be the janitors, the maintenance guys, the admins. You were the engineers, the creators. No more. You're now just the admins, just workers on the field. No more owners of the court. That's just one of the many things that has been taking place behind the scenes when it's been coming to this economic crisis or the long-term economic consequences. Economic crisis, long-term consequences. There's a lot of other things that could have been done and still can be done. Yes, I know I'm gonna get some flack. For this, but I think okay, let's start here. I believe the minimum wage increase was a bad idea. I wholeheartedly believe that it was a bad idea to raise it that high of a level, and I'll explain. When you're doing financial structures, especially for the economy of a country, you cannot look at conglomerates only or just mega corps. You have other businesses and other entities that don't run or amass as much money or accumulate as much wealth as these other mega corporations like mom and pop businesses or just a small business or something like something that's just producing residual income from you, a side hustle, anything like that. Those were also injected into that $15 an hour price increase. Now what didn't happen was the consideration for the size of the entity. You can't hold the same regard for an entity that has less than 100 employees to the same regard as an entity that has over 1,000 employees. It doesn't work. The profit margins are vastly different. The customer base is vastly different. The amount of money that's accumulated between the industries are probably going to be vastly different as well. So now let's do a little bit of math here. So let's say this, right? So let's say you have a mom and pop cafe, right? Or a small cafe. We call it mom and pop because it's usually like two single owners or a single owner of a very small entity, right? So let's just say they have 2 employees that they can afford. Both of those employees now, they get $8 an hour, right? Because they don't amass that amount of money to afford a $15 an hour employee or 2 of them. What do you think is going to happen? I have 2 employees that make $8 an hour. I make enough to cover them at $8 an hour plus goods and et cetera, right? So now with the increase of force being pushed to 15, where's this money coming from? Do I have mysterious sales that increase my profits all of a sudden? Or is the government, quote unquote, supposed to be giving me this money? And we know when that comes, there's a whole bunch of ramifications that comes with them giving you anything. And once you get in bed with the government, you are required or obligated to fulfill whatever request that they deem necessary, right? So again, I digress. Let's get back to the point. So $8 an hour. I have 2 employees that I can afford to pay $8 an hour. So now I'm mandated that I have to raise my minimum wage to 15. So that, what do you think is going to happen? That means 1 employee is going to get cut and 1 employee is going to stay. Because now I could cut 1 and give them their salary, which would now make it 15, 16, take the dollar off. Or you could let them keep the dollar and make it $16 an hour. But you lost an employee. So you lost a portion of being able to cover a certain part of your business. That person lost income towards their family, and so on and so forth. Now, again, my standpoint was that you should never try to sustain a household off of minimum wage. That's not a livable wage. Okay, let me say this again. Minimum wage is not a livable wage. Minimum wage is what we considered starter jobs when we were young. Those are the jobs like McDonald's, fast foods, or let's just say fast foods, restaurants, retail, like you pack bags at the supermarket, you're the counter person at the retail store, you the cashier at the supermarket. You understand? Like, it was jobs like those were minimum wage jobs. Those were the introductory jobs into the job market. That was your introduction into learning what the job market has entailed for you. As the beginning, this is to give you some sets of skills so you could learn and build as you go. It wasn't for you to stay there. Let me say that again. Minimum wage jobs weren't meant for you to stay there. They were meant for you to step in, get something, and step out and step up. Not stay at that ground level. So now with the cost of inflation, you can see the people getting flustered. They're becoming worried. They don't know where to turn. Those making minimum wage, especially. When I was growing up, minimum wage jobs were, again, the jobs for the younger adults. The problem now is that we have too many adults in those positions. So now what does that put the kids who need jobs or these young adults? What is left for them to do? Because now you have older adults who were too lazy or lackluster in some instances. I'm not going to say for everyone. Some people just have some situations, but we're not speaking of those. Those are anomalies. We're talking about the majority. You were too lazy, too lackluster to put the effort in building yourself up so you can move on, because this job was easy. It was comfortable. You didn't have to do much, and you were getting a little bit of money. That little bit of money became appeasing because you end up getting benefits that accommodated the portion of money that you were getting. So now it's becoming gratifying. You're starting to feel fulfilled. I have a job. Cool. Having a job is great. It's great. As you should. But when you get into your 20s, you should be thinking career mode now. Not so much a job. Now, again, the job came from 14. You probably had an after school job or summer youth job, showing my age a little bit. We didn't have this problem back then that these kids are facing now. So now, all their jobs are outsourced to adults, the counselors, the lifeguards, the after school tutors. All the little side jobs that these kids could have been doing, they're now pushed out to the streets. So now you're complaining about them being in the streets and causing all kind of mayhem, but you're in their place. Maybe if you step out of their place, they have somewhere to go. You can't complain about it if you're in their realm. Move. Get out of that industry and let them get in there. But now, with all of this buzz going on, those industries are going to be dying as well because we decided to push it up to 15. Not thinking, like I said, the small mom and pop, because now they're going to be hurt. But now let's think of the conglomerates. You think they're going to pay that? I had read an article from a franchise owner of a McDonald's. $15 an hour. He said, why would I pay an employee just to flip burgers and fries $15 an hour when I could get an automated arm called Flippy? When I could pay $40,000 and it will replace 3 physical workers. It will never call off. It won't ask for a raise. It doesn't get sick. And all I have to do is pay a maintenance fee, and it doesn't need insurance outside of the insurance to cover it. But it doesn't need medical coverage. And that insurance that covers is a subscription that's paid monthly. He said, now let's do the math. And I had to look at it and step back myself. So when you do the math and you look at it from the broad spectrum, $15 an hour. You do that by let's do that annually, right? So let's say we're gonna look at the $15 an hour. We're gonna show the calculations, right? So $15 an hour, and then you times that by 40, right? That's 600. Now you times that by 52, because that's 600 is 40 hours a week. Then you times that by 52 is 52 weeks in a year, right? So now you times that by 52, and you have 31,000 a year. 31,000, right? So now you take that 31,000 and you multiply it by 3. That's 90. It was 31,200 to be exact. So now we're looking at 93,600. I'm just doing this in my head. Hopefully, I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure I am. So it's 93,600, right? So now that's for 3 employees. The McDonald's franchise owner said it would cost him $40 for 1 machine, where it would cost $96 to pay 3 people at $15, while I could pay $40 and replace those 3 plus 2 more, because it can replace up to 5, but it guarantees you 3 automatically. They didn't think about it. It set you up for failure. And because you failed to do the math, you fell right into it. So now those became a dying industry. And I do blame some of the fast food owners for it, because there could have been some equity that they could have done to expand their growth and the well-being of the employee. Because they drive huge profit margins, such as McDonald's, huge profit margins. And the employees get next to nothing. So I do understand in those standpoints the price gouge and how that should give them profit shares. You can break it into percentages and let it build over time. So then you have the employee having the chance to feel like he has a sense of ownership or has something that they can look back at, even though they are working there. So I'm gonna stop right here. And then we're gonna go a little further. Again, this is just one touch on the Great Reset. Today we started off with the financial part. Next, we're gonna talk about the difference between the capitalisms, stakeholder and shareholder. But thank you again for tuning in. If you like the video, if you like the information that we're talking about here, please again like, share, subscribe to the channel. And thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. Peace.